and the animal Pedro Sánchez. It's exactly as it is right now. Furious, outraged, trapped, cornered by justice. It's known he will be formally investigated. They're just wondering when. And he knows that with the alleged crimes committed, he could end up in prison.
To Albert, if this is done to a young guy, a kid with respect and care, who's only 25 years old and just has a microphone, and they're trying to threaten and intimidate his lawyer for defending him in a slander case, how far can they go? I mean, what are the limits? I mean, the people who did this are professionals.
Pedro Sánchez thinks he's a great president who wanted to be remembered for thousands of things. He may have thought that as a former president, they wouldn't dare go after him. Now he knows that a former president of the government can be investigated in the national court. That made him come back down to earth. What happens is that's exactly why he's more dangerous.
We know what the government's stance is regarding freedom of expression, and censorship is their way of life. They tried to scare me, to make me close my account out of fear or because I felt insecure about expressing what I think about freedom of expression.
How was it that Pablo Escobar was very, very close friends with someone who was considered a frontman, administrator, and treasurer of the PSOE, and of Felipe González, who was Enrique Sarasola Lerchundi? And how were there controversies regarding a beach that this person had bought in the Dominican Republic for the president, according to statements made in the early hours of the morning in a state of drunken scientific euphoria?
Our political class needs poor citizens. It needs citizens who aren't truly free. That's why they can build careers out of it. Why? Because they need a poor civil society. Otherwise, no. The idea of the political caste would be unthinkable.
Castillón Confidencial by Albert Castillón.
My insurance sponsors the editorial of Castillón Confidential.
Welcome, Confidenciales. Thank you for being there, for defending freedom of the press, individual freedom, and for loving this country, which is Spain, above the dictators who are destroying it. Thank you for being strong, for standing firm, even in difficult times. And we are living through one of those moments. An animal is most dangerous when it's wounded and knows it's trapped. And the animal Pedro Sánchez is exactly like that right now. Furious, outraged, trapped, cornered by justice. It's known he will be formally placed under investigation. The only question is when. And he knows that with the alleged crimes committed, he could end up in prison. Until now, it was a mafia-style criminal organization and also dangerous. Now it's starting to become a state of highest alert for Spain. Victor de Aldama warned us years ago about how dangerous Sánchez and his mafia were.
Because I believe anything that happens to me now will point to the right person. Anyway, I know I need to be careful. They could make up any kind of atrocity because they're capable of it. I think they're capable of it. So, well, of course, I'm scared. Pues que tengo miedo.
Abalos' son also pointed it out to us more than once.
I don't have death threats. I have threats telling me to shut up, not to talk about Zapatero, not to talk about Pedro Sánchez, not to talk about the police or the Guardia Civil, and not to talk about anyone. That's right, both directly and indirectly. There must be a reason for that.
And Coldo's best friend, our radio colleague, Leopoldo Bernabeu. The first is loyalty.
The second is sheer terror. Albert is terrified of what might happen to his little daughter. Afraid of what? Afraid of what might happen to his little daughter if he ends up revealing everything he knows. Because this guy, this Coldo, he really knows. In fact, on his phone, he didn't have Pedro Sánchez saved as Pedro Sánchez, but as number one. He knows perfectly well the power of number one.
They've told us over and over again, but we didn't want to believe him. The shots at Aldama's car window, the threats, the extortion of judges, prosecutors, blackmail, bribery, the cesspit. Gentlemen, all of this has led to yet another chapter, which is breaking into a law firm to steal case files. And it won't be the last. Get ready, because in the coming days, we may face extremely dangerous situations for many, for all of us here. In front of him, in front of Pedro Sánchez, pointing him out as a corrupt man and the leader of a criminal organization. On Friday, we told you that there was a warrant out for Vito Quiles for a case of slander. It was resolved. On Saturday, the judge lifted the order and Vito Quiles and his lawyer made themselves available to the judge. But something happened on Saturday night. They broke into the law office of Ospina, Juan Gospina, Vito Quiles' lawyer, and took only one file, Vito's. We have information from police sources who assured us. They say that behind this attack on Ospina's office, there may have been a vehicle with an Eastern European license plate. Specifically, they mention a BMW 7 Series. Juan Gospina, Vito's lawyer, how are you, my friend?
Very well, Albert. Well, I'm quite upset. I think this is a warning to others. It's a threat, and attacking the lawyer, regardless of your political ideology, for exercising the right to defense in a democracy is something to be concerned about. It's something typical of Nazi Germany or the Soviet Stasi. Therefore, we're not dealing with ordinary crime. Those who committed this crime were professionals, as you rightly pointed out. They entered the office by tampering with the security systems. First of all, the security systems on the door, a reinforced door with double locks, which was not damaged. Therefore, we're not talking about amateurs, but about people who had the right security system to find that code and open the door without causing any damage or making any noise in a residential building. They came in, and the first thing they did was disable the 2 alarms we have in the office. That was also the work of professionals, and afterwards there was no damage, so that's something to be thankful for as well. There was no material damage, and they didn't take anything that we missed, not computers or phones. We should also tell the audience that our law firm is a criminal law firm, and what we have are case files, court orders, and not much else. There is no safe, we don't handle cash, we don't have a card reader. All payments are made through bank accounts and online. And what really draws attention is that in the office, the back of the office is B's office, my partner. We had Vito Quiles' file printed out, and the only file that's missing, guess which one it is? Vito Quiles' file. So I think we're facing a threat, a clear message. And it worries me because, Albert, if this is done to a young guy, to a kid, with all due respect, who's 25 years old, if all he does is hold a microphone and they try to threaten and intimidate his lawyer for defending him in a slander case, how far can they go? What are the limits, especially if they're professionals? As you rightly pointed out, a BMW series, what is one of the clues is that it has a license plate from an Eastern European country. Let's say, kid,
If it is confirmed, and the police are pretty sure, that in that BMW with a license plate from an Eastern European country, the people who went up to your office were there, what would we be talking about, Juan?
Well, this reeks of dirty state operations. Police information sources tell me that there was a lot of discontent over the fact that Vito was not arrested. Apparently, a large operation had been set up to arrest Vito. For him to spend a night at the police station, to have his photo taken in handcuffs. And when the judge managed to lift the arrest order on Friday as expected, this caused some discontent. I believe that among sources close to the government that remains in the institutions, which by the way I think is tainted by corruption, and that this has their signature. Those who requested the arrest warrant for Vito a few days ago are behind this break-in at the office. I have no doubt about that.
No, yes, because in that file, there was nothing to justify this entry either. In fact, it's more of a warning than anything they found in it, right? You tell me.
I have to tell you, when my partner called me to say both alarms had gone off and the police were in the office, it was 10:30 at night. I felt a bit reluctant to go to the office because I thought, hey, if they've already broken in to steal something, jokingly, I said, I don't know what they might have taken. Sending love to my dear Paco Maruenda. We have a painting of Paco at the office entrance, and I joked that maybe they took it since it's the only valuable thing. But my partner said, let's go see what happened over there. I said, but our office has no money, no safe, nothing at all, and the computers, which need updating, I don't know what they could have taken. Everything was intact when we entered, and they only took Vito's folder. I've also shared this on social media.
Was there anything in that folder? Nothing at all?
Of value?
Worth the effort? No.
Nothing. It was the case file for the slander charge in which the arrest warrant had been orchestrated and we had entered an appearance. Vito, it's true that he has more legal cases, but my communications people almost know more than we do about what's in those files. And our defense in most cases doesn't contain state secrets, so breaking into our office to steal anything doesn't make any sense.
So the threat was directed at you to make you stop defending Vito, to make you look the other way, to make you hand the client over to another lawyer?
It could be. I think so. I've said it on social media. They've only broken into my office twice. One that I didn't make public, which was when Francisco Nicolas, little Nicolas, came to our office to ask us for advice. He came, they broke into the office twice. When we filed the report, people from the intelligence unit of the police told us that this was the state's dirty tricks apparatus, that they were fixers, that they are members who try to do favors, who are very close to the government, and that it was a warning, and whether we took it or not was up to us. And now that we are defending Vito, who is questioning the actions of the government, who has a case involving the wife of the prime minister, who is dealing with that Santa Olala issue, and so on, and I say it over and over again, I am the lawyer. I am neither an accomplice nor a collaborator in what this man says or does on the microphone. I agree with you. It's a clear threat, and he asked me about fear. Well, it does make me feel some uncertainty and concern. Of course, I think about my family. I have 4 daughters and a wife. How far are they gonna go? I mean, it's very worrying. I think it's very concerning. It's not something to take lightly.
It's extremely serious. And above all, if the Spanish state, the government, is hiring people from Eastern Europe, as it seems because of the BMW license plate, they're looking for a Series 7. These people are capable of anything, aren't they?
Of course, but I'm telling you, if they're capable of doing this to a 25-year-old kid, what aren't they capable of doing? I mean, if they go to the trouble of hiring some fixers or professionals from Eastern Europe, that vehicle could be identified, right? That footage on the cameras, but they're professionals. These aren't common criminals. I mean, I don't believe in coincidences, so how is it possible that they got in the... Let's suppose it's just a coincidence and it's classic or street crime, then how did they get in? How did they get into the office without any damage, without anything? And of course, they didn't take anything. Man, please, I think this is obvious.
What message do you send to whoever it concerns? I don't know if it's PSOE, Moncloa, the government, or Messi. In the end, they're all the same. Well,
on one hand, to the government, if they're not involved in this, that they help us find out who orchestrated this threat and that they use all the resources to clarify it. That's what should happen in a healthy democracy, right? That the Ministry of the Interior uses all the means and resources to investigate this very serious crime. Very serious. On the other hand, I want to thank the intelligence unit and the Madrid intelligence brigade. I was just with them, and they have been very diligent with me when it came to looking for cameras, license plates, witnesses, trying to reconstruct who could be behind it. And I say it loud and clear, the fact that there are dark corners doesn't mean our police are corrupted, no. We have a police force. Yesterday, an officer about 25 or 30 years old ran up and down, checking all the doors and stairs in the building to see if the perpetrators were there. That is something to be grateful for. And I applaud that. The forensic team came, I applaud it, and I appreciate it. Spain has solid institutions, and above all, we have professionals with a strong education that prevents corruption from spreading beyond the highest levels of those who govern us. And finally, this is an attack on the right to defense, an attack on democracy, and on our rights and freedoms. So that attempt to scare me, well, not really. I'm not very scared. I believe the truth always prevails and moves forward, and this is nonsense. And I'm convinced, Albert, and we'll find out in time, that we're going to know what has been behind all of this. That is to say, in crimes, we all know this. I also work in criminal law. A lot of traces are left behind, a lot of marks, a lot of conversations, and there's a lot of information here. From some, from others, from the good guys, from the bad guys, and there will be some kind of leak. And it will become known who orchestrated this event, which for me, not because of the way it was done, but because of the substance, worries me a lot.
Juan, with all our support, pass this on to Vito, and above all, they won't be able to beat us. I think I'm speaking on your behalf and on behalf of everyone who defends this free Spain that we want and that we don't have right now. A big hug from here.
Hugs, my friend. Bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's the information. The police have the license plate of that vehicle from Eastern Europe. At least the license plate is from Eastern Europe, a BMW 7 Series. Let's hope they identify the perpetrators soon. Welcome, we're investigating.
The Mis Seguros app has sponsored the editorial of Castillon Confidencial. Download Mis Seguros, the easiest and fastest way to manage all your insurance in one place.
In difficult times, true strength lies in standing together.
Let's also help our Venezuelan community who were with us during the Dana here in Valencia, and let's give them a hand.
Above all, boxes, we need tape, we need alcohol, antibiotics, powdered milk, canned food. Do not bring water, powdered milk, diapers for the children. Nothing in glass because it will be shipped, and gauze, alcohol, iodine, but not cotton, mainly gauze.
We'll provide a template with 3 Valencia locations for delivering humanitarian aid, plus a phone number and contact. For more info, contact us on WhatsApp and we'll share all details.
Venezuela needs us, and from Mis Seguros, we want to do our part to turn our solidarity into real help. For every download of our app using the code Venezuela, we will donate €1 directly to those affected.
Let's help the people.
Exactly. Thank you very much, and blessings to everyone.
It doesn't cost you anything, but it has immense value for them. Mis Seguros is with Venezuela.
Castillon
Confidential
by Albert Castillon. Friends, the facts speak for themselves. 320 people formally under investigation from the PSOE's circle and its leadership, or directly from Pedro Sanchez's circle. 75 open court cases, many of them already with a verdict. Never before in democracy have we had a government so corrupt but also so mafia-like. We are desperate, discovering their ways, which have a lot to do with blackmail, threats, extortion, and who knows what else. What are the limits? The question we all ask ourselves, I am going to pass on to a lawyer who is part of the private citizen prosecution in all those corruption cases and many more. And that is, when is it Sanchez's turn? When is it the turn of number one, the one who has ordered everything the others are doing? Or do we really think they're acting of their own free will? Nuna Lozano, lawyer from Actuar, how are you? How's it going?
I'm doing well here, fighting. It's quite a battle.
That's the question people ask me on the street, and I'm sure they ask you too. When is it number one's turn?
When? Well, just the other day they asked Actuar that at the conference we gave in defense of the private citizen prosecution, both for Pedro Sánchez and for the Socialist Party. And the answer I saw, I'm going to share it right now. Everything in due time. It's understandable. People see that the signs are there, whether they're big or small. But procedurally, we must act with the utmost caution, because a misstep or moving too quickly could end up benefiting them. Any charges, if they are brought, must be based on enough evidence so that it can't be dismissed. And on top of that, we also have to keep in mind that in the case of Pedro Sánchez, the parliamentary authorization to proceed against him is a double-edged sword. They could request that charges be brought and Congress could say no, and that would be it. Case closed.
It's incredible. For a lawyer, come on, for a citizen, that's outrageous. For you, even more so, right? How was the law made so poorly that it lets politicians shield each other from criminal convictions, right?
I agree. And I also think it's one of the debates that society, we Spaniards, will be calling for going forward. Right now, I don't think it's the time to get into it. First, we need to handle the cases properly, wait for elections, and with a new government and new majorities, start to reformulate everything related to those benefits for being deputies or senators. In the end, I don't think lawmakers ever imagined we'd be hit with something this serious. We have the enemy inside the state. Against not just the state, because they are using the state to their advantage, against the nation, against the homeland, against our freedoms. The threat doesn't come from outside. It's inside and it's against us, and I think the legislator didn't foresee that, but that's what's happening.
Well, it's inside and it has control over the armed forces, the state security forces, the state attorney's office, the prosecutor's office in general, except for the anti-corruption unit. That is to say, he has immense power. I understand that's why he stays in office, right? Because it's very cold outside.
Well, the most dangerous thing the Socialist Party has right now, besides allegedly the dirty tricks, the official state gazette, they have a weapon there because they can draft whatever measures they see fit. Right now, we've already seen the measures that were taken at first against the private prosecution, which Bolaños has already hinted to Astuil and Justicia Europa that he wants to eliminate, or rather, not yet, but he wants to further minimize our ability to act. I even think he's considering eliminating us. As private prosecutors, they would prefer that we weren't involved in any case. We've also seen, Albert, that limitation on freedom of the press. Just like on social media, again, just yesterday, we saw the president making excuses with measures supposedly in favor of children when he doesn't really care about children, just to control us on social media. In other words, the official state gazette is that danger because through those regulations, they're putting together a self-protection system to carry out the coup. So it's very dangerous. It's a terrible scenario.
Of course, Nuna, it's a silent coup in slow motion, but a coup nonetheless, which a few of us have been warning about for many years. I've been warning about it since he came to power, and every time they called us all sorts of things. You remember crazy, fascists, liars, and in the end, today, there are more people under formal investigation than deputies. And if not, they're more in prisons, because you haven't put the first one yet, right? For pragmatic reasons. It's hard for me to understand that there are still prosecutors, state attorneys, and some judges who protect them, who give them shelter, when they should be serving the country, not a party. Do you understand that?
It's also happening now with the grandchildren law that when we say, hey, this is a coup, hey, this is electoral fraud, we find voices telling us that we're using exaggerated language. In the end, I think time ends up proving us right. And the other day, I argued in a very simple way. Pedro Sánchez has gone, as I said before, against the judiciary, against freedom of the press, against social media, civil society, everything. What's left for him? The ballot boxes. Okay, well, in a year, Albert, those who today are saying, oh my God, they're exaggerating, will say something is happening. Not all of them, but most of them. I think we shouldn't worry about what to say because of what people will say, because about us, those of us who speak clearly, like you, like Hazde Oyer, who say things as they are, they'll always say we're saying something bad. Always, no matter what we say. So it's better to be straightforward and say things very clearly. It's a coup d'etat. He's gone against all the institutions they could, let's say those outside the government, the ones that have the ability to exercise control, the Constitutional Court, State Attorney's Office, and we've seen what happened at the Attorney General's office. He tries to dominate it. And then, of course, the citizens, civil society, ways to silence us, like with social media. Now he wants to create ballot boxes. He's going to create ballot boxes.
Well, he's going to create ballot boxes. He's going to shut you down if he can. Private prosecution, my channel. He's going to try everything. That's it. They tell me that now is when it's most dangerous. You who know the person and his circle, who have been face to face with many of them, with Begoña Gomez, with Abalos, with Coldo, do you really think that now is the worst moment, the most dangerous one? Especially since they set a date and took away Begoña Gomez's passport, they tell me it has been a turning point for Sánchez.
I think that's the first turning point, and also the indictment of former Prime Minister Zapatero, because now we have to think, forgetting how you and I think, let's think like Pedro Sánchez. Pedro Sánchez thinks of himself as a great president who wanted to be remembered for thousands of things, and in his mind, maybe he thought, I'll be a former prime minister, they won't dare to touch me. The thing is, now he knows that a former prime minister can be investigated in the national court. That has brought him back down to earth. What happens is that that's exactly why he's more dangerous. He's a wounded animal. He's an animal that's absolutely cornered, wounded, who doesn't know which way to go. And so, yes, he's dangerous. But at the same time, he shouldn't get to choose what we do or don't do. I think one of the most important things in a situation like the current one is to stand firm in our work, even knowing this, that Pedro Sánchez and the Socialist Party are a public danger, and also to do it openly and without fear. Does that mean living in a utopian world? No, it means we have to stay strong, because if we don't trust, we won't do anything. So there are people who say there's nothing to be done. That's what the Socialist Party wants you to think.
Yes. And in a few years, I hope to remember this as just an anecdote. And of course, associations like yours will be able to hold your heads up high. You have tried to defend the rule of law above many parties and institutions. How sad as well. You who don't receive a single euro of public money, but that's how it is. That's how it is.
But that also gives us a lot of strength, because without public money, without subsidies, we have complete freedom to go after both sides. We don't have to depend on any outside factor. For us, NAFTOR, it's our members whose donations allow us to do what we do. Because in the end, it's not that we do it, it's that they do it. I don't know, for example, I see it as an honor. I mean, isn't it wonderful that there are people who trust in what we do? And after all, I fully trust that Pedro Sánchez, besides, is much more than just a president or something like that. He's a public danger. He's a danger, and we must treat him as such. So in a few years, we'll remember that Spain is still standing despite Pedro Sánchez and despite the Socialist Party.
Here, we also don't accept public money from anyone, and I confirm what you said. It gives you immense freedom. Exactly. Give a kiss to Javier Perez Roldan, who will be working, as always, flat out. A hug to your whole team. Take care.
A big hug to everyone.
Thank you. Castillon Confidencial by Albert Castillon.
I lost my job and I could only rely on credit cards and loans to get by. Until I lost my house, I lost my family. And even so, I still couldn't get rid of my debts.
If you are in a situation of insolvency, contact us and we will tell you if you meet the requirements for the Second Chance Law. Sin Deuda Group, your second chance.
Welcome to the world of Vichy Catalan, where authenticity and health go hand in hand. Here we know how to enjoy ourselves and also how to take care of ourselves. A place to make every moment special and savor it fully. We look forward to seeing you at Vichy Catalan's House of Sparkling Water.
Friends, as Nuna Lozano said, he's like a wounded animal. Sánchez feels attacked. He doesn't understand why they're going after all his people, why his wife's passport has been taken away, or why Zapatero could end up in prison. People he considered untouchable until now, right? By the way, there's a message that some of you have sent me on social media that I found really funny. And it says it must be fate that the person who hands out the most passports in the world, which is Sánchez, his wife isn't allowed to have one and the judge takes it away from her. You say poetic justice. Well, it's possible, but that's how it is. His wife without a passport and he's giving them away for free? He's like a wounded animal. He knows he's cornered, that he doesn't have much time left, and now is when he's most dangerous. He has decided to activate a regulation that he introduced last February to control what is said on social media under the excuse that minors need to be protected. You know, always lying, camouflaging, sugarcoating reality. The government has set up teams to control what is said on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok, beyond channels like this one. So if they consider that it's harmful because it could affect third parties or minors, they remove it, shut it down, or sanction you. I have a friend with 200,000 followers on X, formerly Twitter, whom you know well, Captain General of the Tercios. How are you, David?
Hi, so how are you?
I loved it, but I see you on the list and you're first. Get ready.
Well, I didn't expect anything else. The government, we know what their stance is regarding freedom of expression, and censorship is their way of life.
Yeah, it's curious. You're an office worker who started posting messages expressing your political views, and this has made you a target of the government. What did they do to you?
Well, they tried to scare me so that I would close the account out of fear or because I felt uncomfortable expressing what I think about freedom of expression. And they tried to get personal information about me because obviously when they have to try to refute ideas, in the end, they never can. They can never beat us because we are right. So they make it personal. They try to poke around in your private life to see if that way, well, you back down. And well, in my case, it wasn't a big deal. I ignored their attempts. I'm still here. Since it happened, I have a lot more followers than before. So, well, look, good luck.
Well, friends who are watching us, you'll see his face pixelated because that's what he asked us for and because we're not Sánchez. Sánchez would show his face, his address, and his phone number so people could go after him, which is what many media outlets did to a young guy who lives in Catalonia, who's an office worker. Just look at what crime he's committed, right? Saying what he thinks. But that's how they are. Get ready because he's a wounded animal and he's extremely dangerous. Jose Luis Rancaño, my dear film director and producer, how are you?
Very well, Albert. Delighted to be with you, with my friends, the Confidenciales, and with David. David, I wish you as much success as the Spanish tercios, who for almost two centuries, were invincible on every battlefield across our Europe.
Yes, sir.
Yes, that was the origin of the name I chose for the account.
Yes, it's a nice name,
That's the reason, right? It's how important it is to remember history. You do that in your book, Reyes y Vasallos, right, David? It's going well. They tell me it's selling well, right?
I'm going to do a little bit of promotion. Here it is, Kings and Vassals. Yeah, honestly, I don't have any data from the publisher, but from what it seems, it's doing pretty well. And I'm very happy because besides that, I'm getting feedback from people who write to me privately, from acquaintances who are reading it and they've already finished it. And honestly, they tell me they've really liked it, that they've enjoyed it, and I'm absolutely delighted. And I can give you a little scoop, which is that I'm already working hard on the sequel. Thank you.
Well, a sequel to the book. That's very good. Hey, you're in Catalonia, in the Valencian community. There's Rancaño, and there are many friends watching us in Andalusia. And there, as you know, an agreement was reached last Thursday afternoon, an agreement between the PP and Vox, just like in many other regions. I'm going to read you the main points of that agreement and tell me what you think. National priority number 1, rejection of Mercosur for agriculture number 2. Stop Agenda 2030 number 3. Burqa and niqab banned in public buildings number 4. Tax cuts including income tax number 5. And 6th, eliminate the Arabic language and Moroccan culture program in public schools. Rancaño, okay.
Well, as a first step, it's not bad. As a first step. And considering what Mr. Bonilla's past is, he must have choked, right, when signing the agreement, because over the last few years in Andalusia, They've been doing practically the opposite of what he's signing now with Vox. I think it's a step, an important step forward, but other issues that I also consider crucial have been left out. But it's very good. It's very good that the PP is starting to have a counterweight to stop being as socialist as the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party.
Yes, yes. In the end, things work when the majority wants them. David, what do you think?
Well, I think that democracy has won. The people have chosen those leaders. It's an agreement that's more or less being carried out in other autonomous communities as well, like Extremadura, Castilla y León, and Aragon. Those agreements are in effect, and I believe the governments are functioning. And from where I stand, or from what I've read, women in those autonomous communities are not enslaved to homosexuals. Homosexuals are not imprisoned. I don't know how many rights the population has supposedly lost. It seems to me that none, because this is always the line from the left that when the right governs, we're going to lose a bunch of rights and go back to some grim and terrible past and I don't know what else. Well, no, it's what the people have chosen democratically and they have to accept democracy. That's how it is.
It's curious, but the left, Rancaño, is less democratic than the right. But here in Colombia, now they're losing elections in Latin America. No one acknowledges the winner, no one.
Yeah, that's something you can't argue, Albert. That's empirical science. Socialism and communism are, by essence, by definition, totalitarian and hostile to freedom. In any case, I'm not as optimistic as you guys, because listening to the interviews with the president of the Andalusian Autonomous Community, it seems like he's embarrassed to have signed the agreement. It seems like he feels, how should I put it? Like he's a bit embarrassed to have reached an agreement with the guys from Vox who represent a significant share of Andalusians. And that's where the problem is. That's where the problem is. We always call it the culture war. People who are ashamed of their ideas. But what ideas would you be ashamed of? Of defending freedom? Of defending your country's traditions? Of giving first aid to your fellow countrymen? Later we'll help others, but first we'll give aid to our own countrymen, to those who are in a bad situation. And above all, what I especially miss is both political parties coming up with a plan to strengthen democracy, because that's what we need. We need to strengthen democracy and restore the rule of law. We need to lower taxes. We need to drastically shrink the government bureaucracy. We have to start fighting in all sectors, especially in mine, in the cultural sector. What is this about leaving television, newspapers, and entertainment continuously and permanently to the left-wing lobbies? We have to start working together to strengthen democracy and to recover all our institutions. We need to get rid of a lot of political cronies who have been in the Andalusian administration for the last 30 or 40 years. This should be done not just in Andalusia, but across all of Spain.
Listen to Montero, Maria Jesus Montero, who got the worst result in history, dares to say this.
For the first time in the history of Andalusia since Franco's regime, the far right is going to enter an Andalusian government. And I find this extremely serious because it shows that this is a shameful pact. A pact in which indeed they don't want to reveal what those policies are that Vox has wanted to impose on the People's Party. And what the distribution of powers in government matters is that they have also proposed in their arrangement. And doubly shameful because of that secrecy, of course.
A shameful little pact. Well, I'll leave it at that, right? Not even worth listening to anymore. By the way, you were talking about the LGBTI movement, David. This weekend, there was the Pride celebration. Guillermo sent us an image that I think, well, you guys comment on it. You know that when Castellana ends, Recoletos, that whole area of Madrid, there's the monument to the fallen. It's a flame that's constantly burning. I've paid my respects there a few times along with the police. All right, this is the photo. Right there at the monument to the fallen, they put a whole row with 20 or 30 urinals. There was no other place along the entire Pride March route to put the urinals but there. Who decides these things? I don't know, David. Maybe they haven't even noticed, you know? Maybe they didn't even know what it was, right?
Well, it's a lack of respect for all the symbols that represent our ancestors, our history, and all the seriousness that the institutions of the state and this country are supposed to have. And as always, they have to mess with those who they know won't say anything back because they're far more civil than they are, and they take advantage of that. But with other types of movements or religions, which I'm not going to name, with those, they never have the guts to say anything because they're very brave against those who don't say anything back, but they're very cowardly with those who, at the slightest disagreement with their way of thinking, you just can't say anything to them.
Look, I do know who is responsible. The one responsible is the Madrid City Council. And it must be said clearly, the one responsible is the Madrid City Council. The event is held in the city of Madrid. And the mayor, what he deserves is that the urinals should have been placed in front of his own house or in front of the door he uses every day to go into City Hall. Can you imagine, David, some of our Spanish tercios from a few centuries ago? Can you imagine any officer? Can you imagine any of the Spanish tercios disrespecting the symbols and traditions of their nation? Wouldn't that be impossible to stop?
They would just walk all over him.
They would tear her apart, exactly. They would put him through the ringer. It's unimaginable. Why? Because for these guys, tradition doesn't matter. Symbols don't matter. They think they're just decorations, things you put out on the street. No, man, you don't know what symbols and traditions are. Traditions are what make you who you are. I mean, we are who we are because of the traditions we've received, the knowledge we've inherited, what our ancestors have done for the world. These guys lack respect, but the Madrid City Council is responsible. They supervise and approve the event for the community of Madrid.
There are so many places, so many corners, places with trees and monuments, but no, none of those, just right there. Well, let it serve, and thanks to Guillermo for sending it to me, let it serve as a protest. And the buzz about the grandchildren law continues, and they're trying to lower the hype. Here, since we've been denouncing harassment, electoral fraud, and irregularities in the voter rolls for 4 years, it doesn't surprise us, but it does surprise the PP. They keep denouncing it, but half-heartedly, and they make an effort to say it's not fraud, it's not rigging, it's just electoral engineering, right? They've let their guard down a little. Fran, Pilar, Fabian, Bernabe, and Isaac. Some of them are foreigners who have been in Spain for 30 years and still haven't been given a passport.
Ask Wellington, the one who was a center-back for Malaga not many years ago, how many years he spent waiting for the Spanish passport. With 2 daughters born here, they had been in Spain for, I don't know if it was already 11 years, and still they weren't granted nationality, they just wouldn't give it to them.
I warn you that when the 700,000 Argentinians, 300,000 Cubans, and 400,000 Nicaraguans, or whatever the numbers were, when they find out that in Spain you have extremely expensive treatments of all kinds, the Spanish healthcare system is going to collapse completely.
I was listening to El Confidencial and it said that someone had been here for 35 years and couldn't vote. Well, welcome to the club. I've been here for 30 years and I already have permanent residency, but getting citizenship seems impossible for me.
How nice it would be if grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, great-great-great-grandchildren, 5th generation descendants, 6th generation descendants, 7th generation descendants, 8th generation descendants could all be regularized. Of all the Spaniards who went to Hispanic America, and that way all of Hispanic America would end up being Spanish.
To all the people affected by the grandchildren law, whether in Argentina, Chile, etc., is there any possibility that the presidents of those countries, for example, Javier Milei, could say, you won't be able to vote in both countries, you can only vote in one?
No, Sophia sends me this message, which is a meme. It says, I want to vote in all the countries of America because it used to be Spain and my Spanish ancestors immigrated to America. Therefore, the 3 of us here could vote in the United States since we founded Los Angeles, in Nicaragua, in Paraguay, in Argentina, in Brazil, in Colombia. Come on, I'm going to end up alone. Let's see, Rancano, we all know what this plan is, and I still have to hear, even on PP channels like Telemadrid, I still have to hear that it's not made for the PSOE to win votes, that they wouldn't win that many either, that Mishavila has said it hardly changes the result at all. Come on, that we're exaggerating. What should I tell them?
Yes, of course. But do you know why they say that? Because deep down, they're tempted to use the law the way the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party does. This is a law that, all Spaniards with a bit of common sense know that this is a maneuver to win votes for the left. But I want to focus on important things. First, what I have been denouncing for a very long time about this law devalues our status as Spaniards. It devalues us, it devalues Spanish nationality. The other day I heard Broncal talking to you on Alver, and I totally agree with what Broncal was saying. It's a kind of high treason, a way of corrupting Spanish nationality itself. I say it devalues because I've been here for I don't know how many years, working, paying taxes, making an effort, building a community with my fellow countrymen, with my neighbors. Then it's always based on the typical falsehoods of the left, right? This whole grandchildren law thing about everyone who left. And why not? As El Confidential said, why don't we go back to the year 1492 and let all the descendants of Spaniards in the American continent vote? And then besides, it's clearly fraudulent. All the public officials are committing malfeasance. Not even the legal mechanism established by law is being respected. I'm with you. I'm sure, Albert David, that if each of those naturalized under the so-called grandchildren law were audited, more than 75% would lose their status immediately, that condition, because it's false. But you have to be attentive when laws are enacted. Political parties must do their job, those from the PP, those from Vox. And when this law was enacted recently, they should have been paying attention. What do you say about these kinds of issues? That's what we pay them for, after all. Well,
the PP voted in favor because they support regularizing the grandchildren of those who fled from there during the Civil War. And then Oscar Puente's sister added, of course, anyone can legalize their status, and they weren't paying attention there.
May I make a point? And why don't they allow the 250,000 Basques who had to leave Euskadi because they were subjected to blackmail, murder, and torture by the criminal and terrorist group ETA? Why don't they allow them and all their descendants to vote in the Basque country elections? It's much closer to us. Yes, much closer, right? This isn't a war of 1936. This is from just a few years ago. Why don't they allow them?
They fought for that. The idea was put forward that they should do it, and it was said no because they didn't live there. We could use the same argument now, right? David, it's so brutal that someone who doesn't live here, will never be here, doesn't pay taxes, and doesn't know us, decides the future of our country. It's so savage. I never thought they could pull off a trick like this, like they're doing, right?
Thank you. Well, I always speak from common sense, and simply you just ask yourself the logical question, is this normal? Is it normal for a person who lives in a country, who has never set foot in ours, who has never paid into the system here, who doesn't know the idiosyncrasies of this country, can vote and decide what government and what kind of policies are going to be implemented in a country where they don't even live? It's like if I had to decide what policies are going to be implemented in Brazil or Nicaragua or someplace like that where I've never been. It's just completely absurd. We know that Sánchez is a con artist. We know that Sánchez doesn't do anything unless it benefits him. If there's anyone in this country naive enough to think that Sánchez does things for the public good, they really need to have their head examined. Sánchez tried to rig the primaries. We've all seen that video of the ballot box where later the Sultana appeared from Andalusia complaining about what had happened, about how they had to kick him out through the back door. That was shameful. That same guy, the son-in-law of a pimp, who has no credibility at all, and all the people who are part of his government, can we really trust that they're going to make a law and a naturalization, some naturalizations, expressed to serve the public interest? 2.3 million applications have already been approved. I don't know if it's 300,000 Cubans, and well, they say they've already approved about 600,000 naturalizations. And Sanchez is hanging on so that when the elections come, as late as possible in 2027, he has enough votes to be able to stay in power, to win those seats that are really close in these provinces where 10,000 votes can make the difference between having one more deputy or one less.
And 200,000 and 200,000. But also, as David said, and it's just common sense, because you also have to ask yourself, does this happen anywhere else in the world? No. Anywhere else in the world? No. Besides, most of these naturalized people will never set foot on Spanish soil. They won't ever come here, but they'll still be able to vote. And there's the paradox that in some countries like Cuba, that vote will be exercised under the control of a totalitarian, tyrannical communist government. It's absolute madness. I'm surprised that the journalistic establishment and a significant part of the journalistic establishment, let's say the establishment that we could place in the center right, keeps defending this damn law, which is by definition and by essence a corrupt law. It devalues our citizenship. And if they want to play that game, let them be brave. Let all the descendants of Spaniards since 1492 vote. I'm thinking of the Extremaduran descendants from my wife's family who emigrated from Extremadura to America many centuries ago. Let all their descendants vote too. It's a fraud, Albert. It's a huge fraud. What happens is that the Popular Party has a tendency to want to use it in the future.
Well, I actually think they've already used it. I mean, the crude way the votes are counted, how the electoral board doesn't open the envelopes, all of that has benefited the PP and the PSOE for years. And well, now with the grandchildren law, they've gone too far, but neither of them is doing badly because of it. I received a photo of a banner hung on a metal fence from Venezuela. And look, it works for Venezuela and it works for Spain. It says, what's wrong with the country is that the solution is in the hands of those causing the problem. That seems to explain everything. We're going to Venezuela. I have a bunch of messages. For example, Simón Bolívar Obregón is a member of Maria Corina Machado's team, and he's there.
Greetings, good morning, Mr. Albert. This is Simón Bolívar Obregón speaking. I am a member of Maria Corina Machado's team and also a member of the Rescue and Humanitarian Aid team. The alarming, excessive presence of the state security forces throughout the entire Vargas region, where, without exaggerating, and I don't think I'm wrong, every 5 or 10 meters, there's at least one heavily armed officer restricting access for humanitarian aid, whether from civilians or non-governmental organizations, to the different points or reception centers for the families affected in Vargas.
And why? Why are they making things so difficult for them? Look, now more corpses are being recovered than living beings, although there are still miracles involving animals or people. The reason was explained to us on Friday by Carlos Salazar. He's a Venezuelan journalist. He's living in exile in Miami. Listen.
What is certainly true is that right now there's a sense of desperation from Diosdado and the regime to control the area. Who comes in, who goes out, limiting journalistic activity, preventing people from recording. We assume that this control will allow them to extract everything they need to move right now. According to the complaints we've received from people, look, they're neighbors. They can see the activity in their building. People claim it was money, but also gold and cocaine.
It's so brutal, they're preventing some parts of the building from being removed because that's where they keep their merchandise. That there are human beings who could be saved doesn't matter. The priority is the drugs, the gold bars. Spain hasn't reached that point, but the risk is already emerging. The risk is there, and that's what we're trying to avoid here.
We've already said it so many times here. Venezuela is a narco state. It's more narco than state. Look, I generally don't really like states. I have a pretty libertarian view of life, you know? I always say this, that states are just a group of bandits or outlaws organized to steal our money through taxes. But in this case, it's a group of bandits dedicated to drug trafficking. They have to protect their business, Albert. They have to protect their business. The first thing they're going to do is protect their business. But do you think any of these scoundrels have ever cared about the well-being of their people and their fellow countrymen? But they've been torturing and killing them for more than 40 or 50 years. They don't care about anything. The only thing they care about is continuing their drug smuggling business and becoming millionaires. The situation in Spain is not like this, obviously. But I would like us to someday, interview some high-ranking civil guards in Algeciras. They can begin describing the situation in Algeciras to us. So we can start to feel the impact of drug trafficking in that area, because when it destroys everything. A civil guard once told me, look, Jose Luis, they destroy La Concepcion, they destroy the young people because they understand. It's not just that they destroy them through drugs. The message they send is, why would you bother working or studying if by getting into this illegal business, you can live much better? It's a way to corrupt absolutely all the institutions of a nation. And down there, we have a serious problem because right now it's the entry point for practically all the drugs that come into Europe. It's Algeciras and the port, and in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Those are the two key points.
David, you move in a different world than we do since we're older. It's really easy to find any kind of drug just around the corner if you want to, right?
Well, I'm 47 years old. I don't know if I look it, but I'm 47 years old too. Really? Yes. I'm 47 years old. I mean, I've also had my share of experiences.
30, not at all. Congratulations.
Goodbye. Thank you. Let's see, Spain is not a narco state yet, nor is it part of the third world, but we're heading there at a rapid pace. The moment corruption is tolerated or normalized, which is what's been happening lately, we see cases of corruption every day, and now it just seems normal to us. The moment we have natural disasters like the one in Havana and the state or government delays, sending aid for 3 or 4 days, for political reasons, when the anti-drug security forces are dismantled, like Ocon Sur in Andalusia, which was working so well. And nobody asks, why is it that when the president of the government doesn't take any kind of political responsibility, or the minister of transport, after the Alamuz accident, he's still in his position, which is unbelievable, 46 dead. They even took away evidence from the accident to try to cover up that the accident was caused by a lack of maintenance. It's like we're on our way to Argentina. Luckily, Argentina was saved, but we were heading toward Argentina, and soon we were going to be heading toward Venezuela. And well, from here, since I'm a Hispanist, I love all our brothers across the Americas, like my own brothers. From here, I want to send them a big hug, especially to the Venezuelans who are having such a hard time. And let's hope that with time, the Trump administration, which already took care of sending Maduro to jail where he belongs, not together with Zapatero and some others. When Delphi does the job that Trump is making him do, they manage to get those people out of the government and put someone in who is truly elected by the people.
Look, what message do they put on the food for the rescuers? When they give it to them because they keep working, looking for someone alive, they send them the food. And on the cardboard container, it says, from God to you. Don't lose faith and a heart. They sent this to me from Venezuela. And I also have this from Venezuela. In the midst of the ruins, he's lost his home. He has a wife and children. He's lost everything. Jackson sent me a video. Jackson worked for a Spanish company in Oviedo. That company's client doesn't pay the company. So Jackson doesn't get paid. And it's a network that wanted to send us this.
Greetings to the whole Norve Castillon team. My name is Jackson Dominguez. I'm Venezuelan from the state of La Guaira. What you see behind me used to be my old home in the state of La Guaira. Thank God I was able to get out in time, rescue my daughter and my dear wife. But I lost my entire home. Right now I'm homeless. This video is for Mr. Jesus Rabadi, owner of the company Martin and Mantenichip, Spain. I worked for him and he owes me 90% of the contract. I'm calling on you, Mr. Jesus Rabadi. Please, I need you to pay me my money. That would be a new beginning to get my daughter and my wife off the streets.
At the very moment we received this video in Spain, I sent it to Jesus Rabadi and asked him to do something. He left us this audio.
Hello, good afternoon, Albert. Thank you for the information. Albert, honestly, I don't know how I'm going to explain. I don't know in what way. That I don't owe anything. The ship owner owes. The ship owner of the vessel owes. Me, I get paid to pay people. I'm an intermediary. I'm in ship maintenance. They pay and I pay. The ship isn't mine, and I don't know how I'm going to explain to those people. Everyone knows, and now they're taking advantage of this situation, and I'm really sorry about what's happening, but I'll tell you again, I help there in person, and my people help there in person. They give water and food. I'm not just anyone you can order around. I don't owe anything to Albert. The truth is, I don't owe anything.
Well, they're addressing you, Jesus, not PDVSA or the ship owner. And I also think that what the law says is one thing and what the heart tells you is another. And they send me a video like that, and I'm not the one who has to pay, but the money has to come from a third party, then I advance it myself. I can't stand that, I don't know. Rancano, you would do the same.
No, I think that right now any act of goodwill that helps our Venezuelan brothers is welcome. I think that all people with good hearts should do everything possible to help and to contribute whatever they can toward restoring normalcy in Venezuela. Now, what's important, what's truly important, we are very satisfied with the Trump administration. We are happy with what Donald Trump has done by taking the dictator Maduro and imprisoning him in New York. But things can't just stop there. The other day on your show, a journalist who has good information was saying that in the Trump administration, there are, let's say, two positions. One position would be more pro-American, focused on American business interests, and the other position, which is the one I urge the US government to take, is based on decency. No, look, forget about economic interests. If you're going to keep doing business with with Venezuela, but you have to get these guys out of the way. Venezuela needs to be rebuilt now. A team of honest people has to come in, people with no ties to the past, who are professionals, who want to recover their country, who are capable of organizing an international aid plan, who won't be sabotaged, who won't become corrupt, and that's the priority. And I would also ask Maria Corina Machado and all the Venezuelan opposition forces to step forward now. They need to stop playing politics now. I don't know, you told me the other day, they say it's dangerous. And if it's dangerous, don't you want to be president of Venezuela? Well, you'll have to face the difficulties and dangers. But I think right now, the situation in Venezuela has reached the edge. Hell has already hit rock bottom. You can't keep digging any further. I agree. We have to start taking action now and get rid of these guys. Every time I see Delcy or Diosdado Cabello representing the Venezuelan government, it just makes me sick, Albert. It makes me sick.
Well, you won't see them for much longer. Delcy is sick, and today we've revealed exclusively that Diosdado is about to pass away due to heart problems. We encourage nature to do what it has to do. But in the meantime, you were telling me that the United States is not acting as it should. There's a special we recorded last week about this. Look, the United States closed Venezuela's airspace, ordered Delcy to do it so that Maria Corina Machado couldn't land. She already had her ticket in Panama about to arrive. Maria Corina is going to arrive. She's going to be there whether Donald Trump likes it or not. And I think she's doing the right thing. And I agree with you. If she has to take the risk, she will. Sending love to Venezuela, and we never forget them. Let's go back to Spain. Government, Sánchez, corruption. Attention, here's the data. 320 people in the PSOE are under investigation today among leaders at different levels. 320. 75 of them convicted. Aleida, Juan Amador, Maria Teresa from Montevideo, Jose Angel Rosario, and Sixto talk about them.
Pedro Sánchez is going to move forward and no one is going to stop him. I don't understand why people aren't taking to the streets. I don't know what's happening. We're asleep. I don't understand it.
The fact that there is no general budget is good for the government. With a budget, what happens? You put out a tender, you allocate a certain amount of money for something specific. But now, without having to say what it's for, everyone who needs money is taking it to do whatever they want.
Sanchez and the PSOE don't acknowledge corruption, they blame others. They want to compare actions, for example, those of his wife, his brother, his government team, his own, with Isabel Diaz Ayuso, who is a woman doing her job very well, who is not formally under investigation and who is not being investigated. If people like the army, people like the CNI aren't doing anything, neither is Europe.
These people, socialism, communism, they're not even capable of living. They're destroying everything, not just the country's money and wealth, they're destroying society.
It seems things could get pretty complicated for the socialist sect, but not for Sanchez. And looking back at the history of those who come from the future, it wouldn't be surprising if someone who supposedly committed suicide starts to appear. Personally, I would try never to be alone if I were this Juli Julico guy or a few others.
I see the desire to take revenge on a country that has not recognized the legitimacy of a government or a president because they don't have it. Nor has it recognized the intellectual legitimacy of someone who doesn't have it either. There is a foundation of hatred here.
What is Judge Calama doing that he hasn't already summoned Zapatero? Or hasn't he sent a pair of civil guards to his house to arrest him and bring him wherever necessary and put him in jail?
He speaks because he promised to explain about the jewels in 10 days and we're still waiting, right? I think the jewels, David, Captain General of the Tercios, are a symbol. Beyond whatever value they have, it's a symbol. Someone who, in front of Ferraz in a safe with the office paid for by the party, a former president who says he has little and gives a lot. And there were millions in emeralds, diamonds, and brilliants. That changes everything.
Man, it's very telling. The photo of the jewels in the safe. And that meme that's going all over Spain with Zapatero covered in jewels from head to toe, looking like M.A. Baracus. It's just really funny. The jeweler of Ferraz, this Mr. Zapatero, who used to give lessons as if he were a moral beacon, and he thought he was. Come on, a kind of divinity. Every time he spoke, and all his yes men applauded him and wanted to show that kind of moral superiority. Well, no, gentlemen, one of your idols has fallen. We all knew that Zapatero was a criminal, that he was a person without scruples, everything he was doing in Venezuela. Did anyone really think he was there to free political prisoners or to help the country's democratic transition? Come on, please. No, we're not 5 years old and we're not naive. Sometimes they treat people as if we were mentally retarded, and the statements they make. Please, I only ask one thing. If you have to lie to me, at least try a little harder, because we're not stupid. I mean, there are things we just don't believe. That the director of the Civil Guard is being charged for having a couple of coffees with Leyer. Come on, please, put a little more effort into the lie. We're not stupid. Please, I mean, a little more intelligence.
They're still there. The Tao of the Civil Guard and the General Director. No one here allows anything.
That's the problem. The problem, essentially, David, you see, is that the so-called Spanish democracy, our institutions, have lost their legitimacy. They lack legitimacy at this moment. And they lack legitimacy because corruption is systemic. From top to bottom. Complete, total. It covers the entire system, all the institutions. We are in a political system where there is no real separation of powers, where the justice system is manipulated, where they govern without a budget. That's the first requirement of any even minimally democratic system, governing with a budget. Where the highest representatives of those who exercise organized violence, authorized violence, which would be the state security forces, are formally under investigation. The head of the civil guard is formally under investigation. And not only that, as you said, Albert, she does not resign, but the whole government defends having an indicted person in her position who has the highest responsibility over a body like the civil guard. What they call democracy, what most establishments call democracy, is a lie, Albert. Open the institutions. The institutions have been losing their legitimacy little by little since '78. And right now we're in a system, I don't know what to call it, of autocracy or of a false separation of powers. Or I don't know, I really don't know exactly what's going on. What I do know for sure is that we're in a regime where the key is corruption. That's the political engine. The driving force in Spanish politics right now is corruption, and it's unstoppable. Unstoppable. I want unstoppable.
Listen to a confidential informant named Fede. He's here to explain what he experienced. If you've got what it takes, you've got what it takes. And if you're not, you go into politics. Watch.
An acquaintance from a town on the coast of Granada went to work in Almeria and lasted less than a month. Well, he came back, ran for office with the PP, and became the mayor of the town. Soon after becoming mayor, he joined the provincial council. A guy with no work experience, no resume at all, no education. And now he's making between 3,000 and 4,000 euros, give or take, between the provincial council and the mayor's office.
You realize he doesn't just make 4,000 euros. No, he also manages budgets from everyone's taxes, maybe worth hundreds of millions, right? You're an administrative worker. How do people have the nerve to say, since I'm not good for the private sector, I'll become a mayor, from there to the provincial council? The parties with the right amount of brown nosing allow this rapid rise, and they end up handling millions. And of course, they end up being Abalos, Koldos, Santos, Zerdan, who were people who did what they did, right? They were really useless for business.
I think Abalos was a primary school teacher. Santos, Zerdan, I think, was an electrician, yes, and many others who have been put there. I don't know exactly what their Garcia fund is.
Doorman at the brothel.
Brothel, yes, of nightclubs. Well, something like that. Well, Pedro Sánchez has taken over nightclubs.
The dancing was different there, right?
I won't even imagine it. On the bars. Pedro Sánchez has taken over every institution he could. And I'll say, right now, the state is still standing, more or less, the rule of law, thanks to the UCO, the Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, and some brave judges who, despite all the attacks from the Commentariat, from the Synchronized Opinion Team, from the 61 paid by Leres backroom operators, which I also want to mention. So Sánchez, during those 5 days, the so-called period of reflection, set up a team paid by the PSOE too. Should the people from the UCO be disciplined by the director of the Civil Guard and the DAO, or should they just look the other way? In some investigations that affected the PSOE, so that the prosecutors who were investigating the PSOE could also be blackmailed, well, with some kind of information about their personal life. The same with judges, the same with journalists who have exposed, uncovered cases of corruption. You just have to look at the newspaper archives and see that everything they said was smears, hoaxes, fake news has been proven to be true. So these people who are now going around telling some story, they just have no credibility at all.
The thing is, she actually believes it.
Now they're saying it's clear and fair, but seriously, how often do you need to be lied to?
Well, the biggest attack we've received here, and we're very humble and small, from the PSOE was 3 days after the 5 days of reflection. When the 5 days of reflection ended 3 days later, we started receiving messages from PSOE lawyers saying that either we kept quiet or we shut down the program, or they were going to take criminal action against us for spreading false information. A furious attack on social media, everywhere. This isn't a coincidence. How much were they paid? Who were they? Who was paying them? And someday I want to know the list of the 61 journalists who were getting paid for this. Because come on, we all have in mind, I have 100 more than those 61. But would any of them do it for free?
Look, David, Watergate is a joke compared to the dirty underbelly of the PSOE that have been managed by that Lere. I would like to remind the online news outlets that in Watergate, the entire Republican administration fell, starting with its head of government, Mr. Nixon. It took the Republican Party years and years to regain credibility, a very long time. But do you know what happens in Spain? Look, there's an excellent movie, I always recommend it, The Hunger Games, which explains very well what's happening. There is an indecent political class that needs a weak and impoverished civil society. When civil society is a strong civil society, a committed civil society, that is dynamic, that takes part in all aspects of life. Politicians start disappearing, they disappear, they blend in with civil society itself. A good example is Switzerland, and I would love to have the political system of the Swiss or countries like Luxembourg. Our political class needs poor citizens. It needs citizens with little freedom. And that's why they can make a career out of it. Why? Because they need a poor civil society. No, otherwise this whole thing about the political class would be unthinkable. By the way, David, in honor of your book, those words just came to mind. What a good vassal he would be if he had a good lord. It's something very Spanish. It's just that Spanish politicians and lords have always deserved to be put in jail. Totally.
There's a saying that goes, who watches the watchman? Of course, it's also quite fitting for what it is.
It is. I have one more video that I've received for you, Rancaño. But first, we're going to the newsroom. Susana Gas, latest messages.
Greetings to you as well from the Castillon Confidential Newsroom. We're starting the week. It's Monday, and we're receiving a lot of messages, even though many of our insiders are already on vacation. But they send us opinions, they send us comments. That's the case with AMG. She says that Diosdado Cabello should already be under arrest by now. And MX says that this process of regularization, of naturalization, ultimately is not only going to affect the lives of Spaniards, which it already is, and a lot, but also pensions. Kemi says that everything happening right now is nonsense. We are living in a tyranny. We are surrounded by people who not only take our money, but also our rights, our values, principles, and beliefs. They have completely destroyed Spain. Luz says it's the replacement of the population. That's what it seems they want to do. They're already doing it. They only want the vote. I don't know if this can be stopped somehow, but it seems like replacement is what they want. Amparo says that the president doesn't even know what he's saying anymore, or even what he's doing. He's absolutely out of control. And yes, every day he seems more gaunt. Antonia also tells us that the most worrying thing about a democracy isn't just what happens, but that people end up getting used to it. If a journalist feels afraid to investigate, or a citizen is afraid to express their opinion, it's worth asking what's going on and how we can better protect our freedoms. Silence in my time and in everyone's time has never strengthened a free society. Eliseo also says that every day he feels more and more, he tells us, that Spain and freedom of expression are being reduced to 0.0. Many journalists like you, Albert Castillon, report that they are under pressure, facing obstacles, and working in an environment that makes it difficult for them to do their job with complete independence. But that's what we all say. If expressing an opinion can cause fear, consequences, legal or personal consequences, it's normal for many citizens to be concerned. We're actually worried about you because you really do tell us the whole truth, and we know that something could happen at any moment. We can defend you, and we must continue with that fight. Thank you so much for that open debate you provide and for your absolutely critical journalism. And Viola says that, and here I'll leave the question for you, if the PSOE is under criminal investigation for illegal financing, as is happening, can they run in an election? This has been on my mind for a long time, and I would like you to answer me. We'll leave it here, Albert. It's important that even if you're on vacation, You keep sending us your messages and opinions from anywhere in Spain. And you can also follow our social media these days, as well as our digital newspaper, which is absolutely free, CastellonConfidential.com. Thank you very much, Albert.
Thank you very much. Of course, it can run in elections even if the PSOE is under criminal investigation for illegal financing. What does it matter? The PP was too, and they also ran in elections. In fact, I think if Sánchez is placed under formal investigation, I don't know what you think, David. If Sánchez is placed under formal investigation, he stays in office, and if there are elections, he runs while under formal investigation. I can see him doing that, right?
If Sánchez is placed under formal investigation, I think that in order to be tried, the request for authorization has to go through the Congress of Deputies first. And we have to remember that in the Congress of Deputies, if Junts agrees, he could win that vote, and therefore he couldn't be tried. And that would be extremely serious. Does anyone really believe that Sánchez has any moral limits to keep him from reaching that point? So the judge's investigation, before we all think we have to rush and charge Sánchez right away and all that, right? You have to think it through very carefully, because if he has enough support, he can get away with it.
There you have it, David.
That's very worrying as well.
It's like shouting, long live the separation of powers. Look at the paradox. The Prime Minister, with the support of the legislative branch, of the political forces that make up the legislature, can stop justice from taking action. And they call that separation of powers. It's just unbelievable. The system is so blown apart. It's so dirty. It's so illegitimate. You get such a cheap, weak democracy when we need the branches of government to be completely independent so they can keep each other in check. If they don't do it, what's happening now will happen.
I've received a title for you from Cataroja. Because the parking lots, gentlemen, flooded by the flood waters are still the same. And neither the insurers nor the consortium will cover or fix them. Watch the video.
Well, Cataroja, July 2nd, 2026, and look at the state all of this is still in. After 2 years, the consortium washes its hands of it. On October 29th, 2026, if no agreement is reached, the consortium washes its hands of it. Yes, that's what we all pay in our bills. All of that is the consortium. Look at how it is. People can't park, and people can't put things in the storage rooms. Because just imagine, look at how it is.
It's still wrecked. You can still see the marks. There are many like that one, right, Jose Luis?
A lot, and I think I'm considering it. I'm already starting to think this through so I can share it through some kind of audiovisual project with all my fellow countrymen about what happens with insurance companies after a tragedy. The thing is, there's more to this, what happens with some insurance companies and what some insurance companies earn. I'm talking about the insurers, car insurance companies, automobile insurers. We should start questioning, start thinking badly about our politicians, since it hardly takes any effort anymore. I mean, as I said, I think the Generalitat, or whoever currently holds the office of the Generalitat, is doing what they can to try to improve the situation, but they don't have the capabilities, and a lot of things need to be changed, in my view. If the problem is no longer just an autonomous community, it's that the entire structure of the state needs to be changed, where the money comes from, how the money is distributed, and based on what criteria. But Albert, before we finish, may I pay tribute to our guest today?
But let me point out one fact. Who was sponsoring, among other companies, Begoña Gomez's master's program?
Yes.
Reales Seguros.
Seguros.
Discussing insurance companies, naturally, because she's worth it. Porque ella lo vale. Come on, that tribute to our captain.
Today, I wanted to pay tribute to the Captain General of the Tercios and remind him, I'm going to try to narrate it. I don't know if I'll do it as successfully as in the actual movie, but I do recommend the Confidenciales watch it. It's the movie, the last sequence of the movie A la Triste, which, you know, is based on a novel by Arturo Pérez Reverte. The Spanish tercios, specifically a Spanish tercio, in the Battle of Rocroi, have lost to the French. And since they have been fierce and brave in combat, the commander or the chief of the French troops tells them that in honor of their effort and bravery, he wants an honorable peace, and that they sign an honorable peace with honors. And the leader of the Spanish tercio approaches him, thanks him, and says, "Excuse me, but this is a Spanish tercio. It never surrenders. It's a beautiful ending precisely because it isn't real blessing. When you defend principles and values, not surrendering isn't an achievement. It's part of the very essence of defending what you believe in."
Yes, friends, yes. Here we are, three crazy guys who would have been much better off if we had thought differently. You can't even imagine. You'd be on Channel 1 all day now, David, hanging out with Santolalla, and look at you. You can't even show your face because of the risk to your safety.
I'd be on La Sexta making movies, Albert.
You, Rancaño, got a Goya by mistake because their blessing is worth nothing, you know. Well,
Albert, I tell my friends many times he was the first, but he won't be the last.
Well, don't let them find out you got a Goya or they'll still take it away from you. Hugs to you both. Thank you. Have a great week. Goodbye, friends.
Goodbye, Albert. Nice meeting you, David.
Well, it looks like we're going to Marbella because there we probably have the best expert on the Dominican Republic and the PSOE. And we have information about those apartments that were supposedly bought or given to Jose Bono coming up in a minute. Castillon Confidential by Albert Castillon.
The price of gold has hit record highs. Those pieces of jewelry you no longer wear could solve many of your financial problems. But how do you know where to go? Javier Peno is confidential and has been buying jewelry, diamonds, gold, and top watch brands like Cartier from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s for 36 years. And he always offers the highest appraisal. He has 6 stores in Cadiz, and the main one is in Madrid at 7 Arenal Street. Don't get confused, number 7 brings good luck. On the first floor, right next to Puerta del Sol, they don't close at midday. No one is going to pay you more. If you want to talk to Javier, call him on our behalf at 91 593 0491. 593-91, completely trustworthy.
Gentlemen, we inform you that the United States justice system has set its sights on Jose Bono, the former president of Congress and former Minister of Defense from the PSOE. He is under scrutiny for alleged money laundering and business dealings with the Venezuelan narco dictatorship. He is being investigated. Meanwhile, here in Spain, we've been asking ourselves the same old question for decades. The question is, how can he have such a multi-million-dollar fortune with the public positions he has held? It has been reported in the press these days that Bono has bought 2 luxury apartments. Well, he has either bought or been given 2 luxury apartments in the Dominican Republic, each about 200 square meters. One that he occupies and another that his close friend occupies. Once Segovia investigations mention a possible gift in exchange for securing a 500 million investment in a large solar park for a company. All of this is being investigated, as we've been told, in the Dominican Republic, in Spain, and as I said, already in another phase that would have nothing to do with this in the United States. The CIA, among others, and is the DA behind that investigation? And a name has come up, which is the person he bought that property from in that building you're seeing. A luxury building in the Dominican Republic. The name is Lawrence Hazuri. This is not just any name of Lebanese origin. The Hazuri family is possibly the most powerful family or one of the most powerful families on the island. From the Dominican Republic and relatives, they tell me about a nephew named Abraham Hazuri. Who are they? What is their relationship with the PSOE? It's normal for Bono to keep associating with someone who, as I mentioned before, even had connections with Felipe Gonzalez many, many years ago. The person who has the answer has published it in 2 books. Miguel Angel Ordóñez. How are you, my friend?
Hello, I'm surprised and curious with all this information you're sharing.
You wrote 2 books, Low-Flying Businesses and Kapkana, The Daring Apprentices of Donald Trump. The story between the Hasuri family of Lebanese origin and the PSOE. And once again, we find both of them here.
Indeed, Lorenz Hasuri was an executive in the privatization of the Dominican airports, which was a rather controversial process denounced at the time. At the same time, he was an executive at a Popular Savings and Loan Association, which is a pretty powerful banking entity, and was also linked to the Capcana project where he kept surfacing the suspicion on one hand of an alleged irregular or at least strange financing of the Socialist Workers' Party PSOE, even with an alleged diversion of funds from the Andalusian EREs to a hotel in that hotel and residential complex Capcana, specifically the Fishing Lodge Hotel, in which he appeared as a major shareholder. A certain Jesus Valencia, who according to Villarejo he has always been the front man for the Socialist Party and for Felipe Gonzalez, or for Felipe Gonzalez and the Socialist Party in certain operations, right? There was a defendant in that case who claimed that this man was allegedly dedicated to placing things internationally. Finalmente, Socialist Party resources covertly, right? So in the end, all roads lead to Rome.
Yes, yes, of course, but what you're telling me is shocking. That is the EREs of Andalusia, which were funds to bail out companies and Andalusian workers. They end up in this fancy hotel we've seen, at least part of them, part of those millions, end up in a fancy hotel in the Dominican Republic. But what connection does the PSOE have with the Dominican Republic? Why is it that always from Felipe Gonzalez to now Jose Bono, there's nothing there?
Well, yes, in the end, it doesn't matter which faction within the Socialist Party it is, all roads lead to Rome. But in addition, all of this is complemented by the fact that in that famous residential and hotel complex in Capcana, which went bankrupt, there was a hole of over $700 million. And then it was revived in a rather controversial way as well, including fast-track naturalization for Abraham Hasuri, the leader of this whole complex, who became a Spanish national. By the way, thanks to the good offices of Zapatero's government, by the way. Well, in addition, all of this is completed by the fact that in Capcana, many high-ranking officials of the Venezuelan Chavista regime made massive purchases, such as, for example, Daniel Diaz Granados, who is mentioned. In this latest information, it's related not only to Jose Bono, but also to Jose Luis Rodriguez Zapatero and many other high-ranking officials who are now imprisoned in the United States. For example, the famous nurse of Hugo Chavez and many others, just as we explained in Capcana to the bold apprentices of Donald Trump, and also in shady businesses.
Right? Hey, I spoke with Galiacho, with Juan Luis Galiacho, director of Sierra Digital. He just published information showing that officially, Jose Bono doesn't have a single company in the Dominican Republic, that he pays taxes, if he does, in Spain. But over there, he doesn't appear as the head of anything, as CEO of anything, as administrator of anything. Everything is in someone else's name. What does this technique sound like to you?
Well, it sounds kind of shady. My informants there on the island did tell me that at one point he registered 6 companies. They were based in Santo Domingo, in the Dominican capital, but he has been dismantling them little by little. And until recently, only 2 of them were actually active. There are other people connected to him, both romantically and in business, who do have a presence in some Dominican companies. It's a bit strange that behind the activity of those Dominican companies, there are illicit or illegal activities, because normally the usual modus operandi when there are illegal activities is to disguise the companies more, right? Of course. With the involvement of companies, companies established in tax havens, for example, and there in the Caribbean, there are many tax havens, not just Panama, but also the Virgin Islands, Tortola Island, where a collaborator from your show a few years ago told me to look for some clue about hidden assets of socialist leaders. And they are very, very opaque tax havens where you really can't know who the actual owner is, whether of bank accounts or companies established there.
By the way, you were one of the few who wrote and reported that Felipe Gonzalez was financed in his first campaign that led him to become prime minister by Pablo Escobar Gaviria. Did they ever sue you for that?
Yes, not so much for that, but also for linking and revealing information from Villarejo regarding alleged frontmen, according to Villarejo, who operated in the Dominican Republic to take care of Felipe Gonzalez's long-standing interests, right? A controversy that started, as you rightly say, with the financing of the first election campaigns, the presence of Pablo Escobar Gaviria at the celebration of Felipe Gonzalez's first election victory, and the inauguration of his first term as president of the government, and how Pablo Escobar was very, very close to someone. Who did they have as a frontman, administrator, treasurer of the PSOE? And of Felipe Gonzalez, who was Enrique Sarasola Lerchundi, and how there were controversies regarding a beach that he had transformed. And this character bought it in the Dominican Republic for the president, according to some statements made in the early hours of the morning in the midst of idyllic alcoholic euphoria. All of that has ended up leading to issues like the alleged diversion of money from the EREs to the Dominican Republic. And indeed, complaints were filed against me because of all those revelations, right? Mainly because they know that even if they don't win in court, they can still cause me financial harm. You know about this well. Bleeding me financially with the payments I have to make to lawyers, to legal representatives, right? And even if they lose, they always win in that sense, don't they?
It's outrageous. What are they like? Look, Felipe Gonzalez supposedly had the person you mentioned, Sarasola and Barderas as frontmen, Zapatero.
That's always, according to Villarejo, for example, who knows Jesus Barderas very well. And there are other sources that pointed this out about Enrique Sarasola.
No doubt, but Zapatero is currently being investigated, and it seems more than proven that he allegedly had Julio Martinez as a frontman, and I'm wondering who Sanchez's frontman is. Let's see if you find out before the EU says it.
Well, I think we'll find out sooner or later.
Sooner rather than later. Miguel Angel, keep writing prophetic books because everything you've said in them is coming true. A big hug. Thank you very much.
Hugs, thank you very much.
We have very experienced insiders everywhere, and I appreciate that. They send us hundreds of messages every day, although sometimes it takes us a while to air them. We try to do that with all the ones we think are most interesting. These days, there's a lot of talk about Zapatero's jewels, and King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia appears on an official visit that took place with Zapatero 20 years ago. Those images are on TV constantly. Well, Elena, who is a confidential source, says the man on the screen is not King Abdullah.
I have met one of the wives of King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia. In every shot where there's a Saudi man with, with the headscarf on and all that, the only one who is really King Abdullah is the one who appears with a very black mustache and a very black beard. The others, if you notice, have a different kind of beard, they're chubby, they're short, just like Abdullah. But Abdullah is Abdullah. He only appears there 1.5 times.
What I don't know, Elena, is whether it's because the TV stations are getting confused or because he had doubles. You who met one of Abdallah's wives, tell me about it. Big hugs, thank you. Also, Mayelin was on the runway at Torrejon de Ardoz, the military airport near Madrid. And Sánchez was putting on a show with some Afghan refugees. Mayelin says that there she saw the true personality of Pedro Sánchez.
I was a volunteer when the Afghans arrived at the Torrejon de Ardoz airport. That was set up in less than 3 days. It was done by the UME and they checked us before we could enter. I worked the night shift and on Saturday, after a week, Pedro Sánchez came for a photo op. And those little cabins, I would say, because I'm originally from Cuba, even had air conditioning. And Sánchez went for a photo op. And there's no difference between someone coming from another country, since I'm an immigrant myself, and the Valencians.
Yes. Well, in the Canary Islands, they've still been in aluminum containers for 5 years. They don't have air conditioning. Well, Annabelle, gentlemen, I'm with you. For me, Gertrude Zapatero's secretary, the other day she was at the Senate committee last week. She scares me just like she scares you.
I've been following the live Senate session for a while as they questioned Gertrudis Alcazar, ZP's secretary. And honestly, I think analyzing this person's gaze is important.
Well, this is for psychologists or psychiatrists. It's scary. I mean, being Zapatero's secretary must affect anyone psychologically. But there it is. I'll leave it at that. I hope she spills the beans when they tell her she could be sentenced to prison. That she should stop being loyal and faithful to a criminal like him, and that they should think, for example, about the Cuban prisoners she didn't help or even help to imprison. Well, there's more. Janos, thank you for your words of support.
I'm wonderful. You work a lot. It's true that you bring up so many things, and then I see them later and I say, look, and about this grandchildren law, you should know that I've been talking about it to only my son for many months. And my son always comes up with something and tells me, no, Mom, this and that. And now every time it comes up on TV, I say to him, what? Was I right or not?
We come from the future, right, dear friend? We do our job, but what I really don't understand is how there are so many who just bow to the official version of things. Thank you, dear friend. Well, and thanks to Jaime de Diaz, who has made a donation to us as he does every month. He says, there are still only a few of us, but we will end up succeeding. Margarita de Bataller for Spain, thank you. Miguel Pablo Rego. Luis Marco, thank you very much, Luis. Jose Ignacio de Burbo, thank you very much. Annabel Fernandez, thank you very much, who says for reporting freely. Thank you to Consuelo Orts, to Teresa Nieto, and to Isabel de Pau. Thank you very much, because without you, this program would not go on. And Freud Lannister, imagine Bolaños and Sánchez seeing the bus arrive, the one that passes by every day, by PSOE and Moncloa, to take away those under investigation.
But what a mess this is. Bolaños, what's that bus? Where are those workers going? Is it a trip?
Not exactly, Sanchidad.
What's happening? Why are they leaving?
It's a bus rented by the UCO to transport those under investigation that day.
Wow, that's practical. So efficient. They're taking another one, someone I don't know. Thank you.
But the one they're taking is Hernando, Mr. Saunas.
Who are you talking about? Who?
Well, Hernando, your ex-chief of staff and Secretary of State for Communication.
Well, what you're telling me doesn't ring a bell.
Yes, Sanchidad was his spokesperson, his colleague for years, and even his mortal enemy for a while.
No, Mortadelo, I don't know him.
Pedro? They're arresting me. Help!
Get inside. Let's go.
But that anonymous guy really screams. Unbelievable.
That anonymous guy, I don't know who he is. That's just how he is. Well, there's a stand-up comedian named Danny Ales. I love him. Juan sent me the clip and he's really funny. Listen.
If someone doesn't know, being a socialist means having little.
Being a socialist is
normally having very little and being
willing to give
a lot. Being a socialist is having little and being willing to give a lot. That's what they say. Then what they actually do is have a lot and be willing to declare very little. Very little. And then there are the self-employed, where they take a lot from you, but in return, they allow you to have very little. I mean, that's something.
Just like life itself. Well, and to finish, Luis and many other people sent this to me. This is a work of art made with the heads of the corrupt and the bodies of wild animals, which are the best. Always trust a wild animal over any of those people you see there. See why it's a work of art. There's something like a hyena, Sánchez. Oscar Puente, the orangutan, the pig, the minister, the rat Marlaska, Bolaños, the crow, Pachi the sheep, María Jesús Montero, the hen, Yolanda Díaz. The todo lizard, Begoña Gómez the gorilla, Zapatero the camel, the daughters of a hyena toads, a donkey. Sanchez's brother, a vulture, Irene Montero, and Ione Belara, and a bat, Pablo Iglesias, and a hippopotamus, Gertrude. What's more, it's so well done, really, that they look like real animals. Well, get ready. Last week, we reached almost 40 people under formal investigation in the PSOE. We have already surpassed the figure of 300 people under formal investigation and 75 convicted people. Since Sánchez has been in office, we've surpassed the ERE cases in Andalusia. This week promises that number will increase. We need to add a new section to Soto del Real. Trust me. We'll tell you here. Thanks. See you tomorrow. Now.
You know it and I know it. We are confidential, you are confidential, I am confidential, all of us confidential. All of us confidential, but shh, only for open minds and for awakened people, only for the awakened. From the trench, the bullets whistle and there's no way out. To get out there, here freedom has wings of wax. Alberca is Albert Castellón, Susana Gash. You girls, Nora and everyone else, thank you very much. Hasta mañana a las 8.
Castillón Confidencial by Albert Castellón.